don't.
Oh, awesome. You just have to click, and then there is a microphone if you need one.
Okay.
You're so very welcome. And I am going to introduce you. How's that? Thank you, everybody, just for a few minutes of technical difficulties. Today, I'm happy to introduce Pree Bhutani. She's a master's student at Northeastern University. Pree was diagnosed with epilepsy as a child. Pree decided early on that she would dedicate her life to becoming an advocate for epilepsy. She has spoken at congressional hearings and has lobbied for seizure first aid legislation. She has worked tirelessly to break the stigma that surrounds epilepsy. She joins us today presenting Seizure Control, Navigating Puberty and Young Adulthood with Epilepsy.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to my session today. So here's just a quick table of contents of everything that I'll be going over in my slides if you want this preview. "13 years ago, my final year of elementary school was stolen from me. I can't tell you what I learned in the second half of 5th grade, but I can tell you that I was on 500 milligrams of Keppra every morning. I can tell you how scared I was when I had to skip school to get an MRI, how I thought that the entire building was going to go up in flames and I would be stuck in this giant, mysterious machine that was probably reading all my thoughts and knew exactly who I had a crush on. I can tell you how cool I felt being able to stay up all night on my iPod Touch, only to have to leave the house at 6 a.m., drive an hour to the hospital to hyperventilate and get wires stuck in my hair that take at least 3 washes to get out, or how the egg and cheese sandwich at Au Bon Bon tasted after those EEGs, because I had it so many times during those few months. I can tell you that my friends would make fun of me for missing so much school. And I just had to stare at the floor during those interrogations because I was just as confused as they were, if not, maybe even more. I went from not knowing what a seizure was to finding out that I have a lifelong diagnosis in just a matter of a few weeks. How do you explain that to your friends, especially as a teenage girl when all you want is to fit in? So, hi everybody, my name is Pree, I'm 23, I'm from Montgomery County, Maryland. I graduated from GW last year with my bachelor's in marketing and event management. I've been featured in Epilepsy Quarterly, What the F podcast, Congressional Briefing to introduce the caucus for the epilepsies, and I have my own TikTok called Brainy and Bold, where I share my epilepsy story, and next week I'm starting my master's at Northeastern. So, sorry. I faced many challenges with my epilepsy, as I'm sure many of us in this room have. So I really hope that through the stories and tips that I share with you today, you can also learn how to thrive with epilepsy. So by the time middle school rolled around, I still hadn't told anybody about my epilepsy. But this strange new feeling crept up on me. It's like, you know when you're outside and like a bug crawls on you and you can feel it, but you can't see it and you don't know exactly where it is, so you just keep kind of shaking and hitting everywhere and hoping it'll just go away. It was kind of like that, except it wasn't a bug and it couldn't leave me because it was in my head. I've read things about depression and mental illness online and in books before. I read about teenagers doing terrible, unfathomable things to themselves. Only I wasn't a teenager. I was 11. They talk about Keppra rage a lot. They talk about, the insomnia, the lashing out, the temper tantrums, but they don't talk about the internal effects, the sadness. After 2 years of this, I started therapy, Wednesdays at 4 p.m. I know some people talk kind of poorly about therapy, but the truth is that as a child, I was so fragile. I was so alone, despite having such a tight friend group and a supportive family, that I can truly say that now, at age 23, therapy changed my life. For 7 years of my life, my epilepsy was a secret that only me, my family, and my doctor shared. It was lonely and burdening, carrying so many secrets at such a young age, but from the perspective of a teenage girl, I would have rather been burdened than be seen as different by my peers. My junior year of high school, my school counselor introduced me to a freshman who had epilepsy. And she kind of wanted me to mentor her since I was older. But the truth is that, if anything, she kind of mentored me. This girl was more open about her epilepsy, whereas mine was still kept a secret. And this friendship meant more to me than either of them will ever know. Because up until that point, after 7 years of having epilepsy, I never met anybody else with epilepsy. And so finding out that there were, in fact, other people my age who shared my diagnosis, who I could talk to without having to feel ashamed or afraid, and I could open up and we shared our experiences, that was so freeing and so life-changing at that age. But the same year, one night, my class was on an overnight retreat. And a few hours in, I found myself on the floor with my school nurse on top of me. I'd had a seizure in front of my entire grade. And I'd never had a seizure in front of anyone other than my family before. It felt like I'd been stripped down for everybody else to watch. Like they all had a front row seat into my life, and I was just standing in the back with a distorted view. The most vulnerable part of myself had been put on display for everybody to see. So going back to school, it felt like I had a scarlet letter on my chest. You know, like I was no longer the nice girl or the smart girl or the girl who was president of 2 clubs and vice president of another. Instead, I was the girl with the disability. But I'd never been more wrong. Instead of making fun of me, my classmates were supporting me. They were worried about me. One day, one of my teachers came up to me with this giant bag. And at these retreats, it's tradition to write notes to our loved ones. And because I missed that part, my classmates wrote them for me. And I realized after this overwhelming support that the thing that I'd been so worried about for the past 7 years was just a made-up scenario in my head, because I ended up receiving the exact opposite treatment that I'd been so scared of. I talked to the freshman with epilepsy, and we decided that we should do something about this. Using our friendship and my experience, we decided that we could start educating our school community instead of just keeping things among the 2 of us. So that's what we did. We did a school-wide presentation about epilepsy where we had like epilepsy triggers, common epilepsy misconceptions, and we even added celebrities who have seizures to make it a little more relatable. After school, we had a pizza fundraiser to donate money to epilepsy research. And we even gave out little pins with the epilepsy ribbon on them, because at my school, girls would put like charity ribbons on their skirts. So everyone wore them. And it was, the most rewarding part about all this was how we brought the community together. Because after this, random classmates of mine would come up to me in the hallways and tell me about their loved ones' experiences with epilepsy. And I realized that maybe I wasn't the only one in that place who needed this outlet. I realized that my epilepsy might be a part of me, but it will never be something that defines me. So I took this opportunity to create a new definition for myself. Advocate, educator, leader. I became the Maryland team representative for Teen Speak Up that same year. For those of you who don't know what Teen Speak Up is, it's a 3-day conference hosted by the Epilepsy Foundation, and there are 51 teams, one from every state, and Teen Speak Up. The first 2 days are a conference with speeches and breakout rooms, and the final day you lobby on Capitol Hill. And so that was inspiring for me because, as I mentioned before, I never met anybody with epilepsy. Now I was in a room with 50 other kids my age with epilepsy, which was a huge change. But with these people, we were able to joke about it together. We were able to talk about it casually. And it was so inspiring seeing how open all of these other kids were, especially I was one of the oldest ones there. So watching these 12-year-olds being able to open up and advocate for and about their epilepsy was one of the most beautiful and most inspiring experiences that I have ever had. This was the first time that I shared my story. We all ran around and had 1 minute to share our experience with epilepsy. And it was very freeing to feel open because I never had that before. That summer, I was so inspired by the power that I felt as a result of Teen Speak Up that I decided to become a camp counselor at Brainy Camps, which is a summer camp hosted every year by Children's National. And so they have a camp for just about every chronic condition that a child may have. So of course, I was a counselor in training for the epilepsy one, and that took things to a whole nother level because while Teen Speak Up was more policy related, this was a 1-week-long sleepaway camp. So it was much more intimate. And I was able to understand epilepsy on levels that I didn't know before. We would have these little group therapy sessions with the other counselors in training, and I realized that while I was learning to get my license, there were kids older than me who would never be able to drive. One of my campers had multiple seizures in the shower during that week, and I had to take care of her after. And I had no idea what to do because I'd never seen anybody after a seizure before. I'd never seen a seizure before. I didn't know that people had multiple seizures in a week like that. This was the first time that I ever saw a child wearing a helmet. And I didn't put it together until a while afterwards. I thought that it was the memorabilia he was wearing while he was away from home. I just didn't put it together because it was something I never thought about. And I realized that sometimes we focus so much on our own lives and our own issues that we don't open our eyes long enough to realize that other people are experiencing the exact same thing. So after this was COVID year, so I continued with Teen Speak Up virtually my senior year. And then I decided this epilepsy community was something that meant far too much to me, even after I went to college. And it was something that I wanted to maintain because the epilepsy community that I was a part of was a community that understood me and supported me like no other. So when I was 21, the Epilepsy Foundation reached out to me. They said that they were having an introduction congressional briefing for the Caucus for the Epilepsies. And they were looking for a speaker to represent youth with epilepsy. And they wanted me to do that. And I did. And one thing that I learned from this experience is that every single time that you share your epilepsy journey or talk about your diagnosis, they're all very different experiences. The first time I had 1 minute in a kind of political environment. The second time it was very intimate, late at night when we were sharing our deepest secrets. This time it was in front of policymakers that I had 4 minutes to just put myself out there and advocate for the rights of everybody with epilepsy. And that was another it was a stressful experience, but for me it ended up being very rewarding because afterwards, this girl came up to me. She was just a few years older than me, another Indian girl, and she told me that my speech really resonated with her because she had just been diagnosed. And hearing my story from what I learned between 10 and 21, she had written down multiple notes that she was going to carry with her throughout her diagnosis. So, last fall, the Epilepsy Foundation reached out to me again and asked me if they could feature my story in the Epilepsy Quarterly, which is their quarterly magazine every year. So of course, I said yes. I wrote something up, sent pictures, and if you look at page 10 of the fall edition last year, you'll find me there. In February at the Walk for Epilepsy, Laura from the Epilepsy Foundation, she's the government relations officer, bless her heart, I love her, introduced me to Landis, the host of What the F podcast. In May, Landis had me and my mom on her podcast as a Mother's Day special. And I know I just said this, but sharing her story is so different in front of different audiences. This was one of the most mind-blowing experiences to me because as of this point, I shared it in front of other epileptics my age. I shared it in front of policymakers and their staffers. But now that it was a video, a virtual video, I was sharing it in front of people who I knew. And I didn't even know that. This video, it was around Facebook and Instagram, and our family members from different countries and my friends and my parents' friends were all watching this. And everybody texted me with that overwhelming support that I received in high school, telling me how these small things that I had said really resonated with them. And these were things that I didn't even think twice about because it's become my daily life. Things like how to tell your roommate about your epilepsy or how you never really stop feeling ashamed, because the truth is that I felt ashamed the entire time. I almost refused to post that I was on the podcast because despite the fact that I'd spoken at a congressional briefing, that I've talked to senators, you still get a little hesitant in front of the people that you know. But after all this positive feedback that I received from the people in my communities, I was like, maybe I do have a voice. Maybe I do have potential to help other people because these small things that I don't think are that deep obviously mean so much to other people. So as a result of that, I started my own TikTok, Brainy and Bold, where I post little tidbits about my epilepsy story. I post tips for people with epilepsy, even just random, funny, relatable content, just everything. And from there, I've created this, not just epilepsy, but an entire chronic illness community of people with all illnesses. I have people with PCOS and FND and POTS and diabetes who are commenting on my videos saying how I've helped them. And I didn't, that was never my intention, right? To help people like that. But you realize how connected we really are. And I may be the one creating content, but I get so inspired by these people in my comments. The way that they are willing to be so open to receiving help. The way that they just will randomly comment, like, the small wins, like, I'm this many months seizure free. Or, you know, my son just got diagnosed, can you help me with this? Just the little things that they comment, the way that they're so open about their epilepsy in a way that, it took me too long. And the reason why I created this account is because between the ages of 10 to 17, I had nobody. I had my family, but if I wanted to be the person who I would have needed when I was at that age. And it's really amazing to see that I can be that person. Even if it is only 600 people, I can still be that person for those people. So, of course, all these things that I've done, I could not have done without the beautiful people in my life. And I am so grateful for these 4 different groups of people that I have. So I want to start off by saying my family has been everything to me throughout this entire journey. They're the only people who have been here. My mom traveled all the way from Maryland for this, so love you. But my mom has always been my #1 supporter, and she knows me probably better than I know myself. And I'm the kind of person who I need to be working, I need to be on the go all the time. And if I'm not, then I'm wasting my time, and that's a waste of a day. Like, if my laptop doesn't die during the day, I did something wrong. And my mom is the person who will put me in my place and be like, Preetham, you are vulnerable in your mental and physical health. You can't afford to stress yourself out like this. It's okay to take naps. It is okay to rest. And I am so grateful that I have her to check me like that, because I would never do that to myself. Additionally, my dad, every morning in high school, would drive me to school. And between, waking up at 6 a.m., late nights in high school, the stress of high school, and debilitating menstrual cycles, I had a lot of seizures in the car on the way to school. And every single time, he would just pull over, make sure I was okay, and then turn around and take me right back home. And every time he did so without complaint or frustration. Additionally, I mentioned the support from my classmates that I received after that seizure, but my school was also a huge help back in high school. Even though my friends didn't know, some of the staff did. My school nurse, if I did make it to school, I would literally just leave class and stand in the doorway of her office, just like a sad puppy. And she would understand that meant that I was really tired and couldn't function. And she would allow me to rest for as long as I needed, and she would handle my teachers for me. And she did it with such ease and in such a respectful and nonchalant manner that I genuinely believed up until graduation that this was treatment that every girl got when they were on their periods. She never made me feel different or unsafe. She just was able to provide me with the safety net that I needed. Also, my sophomore year of high school, a girl unfortunately ended her life. And my friend and I decided to start a mental health club in hopes that we could save the next person. And so we did, and our school was extremely supportive of that. Again, we presented in front of the entire school a movie of the difference between how physical and mental health are treated. We had our friends as actors. They were great actors. And the club was thriving. There was immense support from the staff and students there. I'm still in therapy at 23, and I still love it. I now have a psychiatrist. So I'm on medicine that controls the depression and the panic attacks, and I think that I'm currently at one of the highest that I've ever been. And of course, the epilepsy community. I've said this plenty of times, but I wouldn't be up here if it weren't for them. A lot of things in my life that I'm so proud of wouldn't have happened if it weren't for them. Shout out Pree and Landis. And yeah, they keep me grounded, they keep me stable, and they allow me to remain open and have a community of people who are open with me as well. And this is the mental health club in school. So, of course, last week was my 1 year seizure-free. So there are obviously certain things with your physical health that you have to do. A lot of them I've learned the hard way. That are things that at least I do that may help other people to make sure that, I get more than 1 year seizure-free. So I have this water bottle, 64 ounces. I drink 2 a day. And I know that's a lot, but that really helps me. Additionally, I've noticed I eat a very balanced diet. I've noticed that carbs and protein are two things that if I lack, I have seizures. So I make sure that all of my meals contain carbs and protein at least, but preferably all the food groups. I track my sleep with my Apple Watch and the next day, if I see that I got less than 8 hours of sleep, I won't drink coffee. And also I will cut out time to rest or to nap, especially if it's much less than that. Sometimes I'll even avoid driving or high-risk activities like that. And also, if I'm in the sun for a long time, I've never had seizures from the sun, but it does make me dizzy and nauseous, and so I'm not afraid to run inside and take my time in the AC, because that's very important to me. Sometimes these things can seem a bit excessive or a little embarrassing with that feeling of being different from other people, but you just have to understand that your needs are your needs, other people have their needs, and these are the things that I need to do for myself. So opening up to peers, I think is one of the hardest things about having epilepsy. Personally, no matter how many times I tell my friends or my roommates about my epilepsy, I feel like it never gets easier. But I do have this 3-step plan that I follow every time I have a new roommate or anytime I travel with a friend. So first, I kind of choose a time where we're all calm and collected. So a girls' night in or a dinner, and there's never an easy time to have this conversation. It's always going to be uncomfortable because there will never be a time where you're on the topic of, do you have epilepsy? So I just kind of have to be like, hey, I need to talk to you about something kind of important for a sec. I have epilepsy. I teach them what to do when I have, if hopefully not, I have a seizure. Put me on my side, put something under my head, etc. And then I give them my mom's phone number in case of an emergency. It's not easy, but it is a very quick conversation, and it's a very relieving conversation as well. And you can do it. So, accommodations and advocating in academic environments. I am the kind of person who, I like to do everything by myself. I don't like accepting help, which is why I appreciate the people in my TikTok comments so much because they're open to it and I'm not. So, I was always I always refused accommodations. I was like, I know I'm able to get them, but I don't want them because I don't need them. After a lot of pushing from my parents and seeing how they help my friends, I was finally like, maybe I'll give this thing a shot. It helps. So here are the accommodations that I got in college. I got extended time. If I had 2 exams in one day, I could opt out of one of them. No tests, quizzes, or exams before 10 a.m. I got priority registration, which was very, very helpful. And I could miss class for makeup work depending on the professor. But advocating for yourself is so important, because there was one time where one of my professors didn't listen to me, even though I showed her my letter. It was when I had 2 exams at the exact same time. And I emailed both of my professors and I was like, hey, this isn't just my accommodations, I just can't take both exams. And one of them was refusing to budge. The other one was like, okay, I'll let you take it, but at 9 a.m. And I was like, here's my letter. No, you can't. And she was like, sorry, I don't have any other time, 9 a.m. I was like, do you have another proctor at a different time during the day? My letter specifically says this is the law. And she was like, no. Eventually, I got her to budge, and I got to take it at 9:50. Advocating for yourself is very, very important, because a lot of times you will have professors who, despite your letter, won't listen to you. And that's not okay, because you know your needs better than anybody else does. Setting boundaries in social environments is another absolutely crucial topic. So there are a few ways that I do this. When I was younger, I would get a lot of FOMO, which is fear of missing out, if anyone. But I would, because there were certain times where, you know, my parents would say, you can't sleep over, you can't stay out at this event, and I would get really upset. But I feel like now I'm at a stage where I understand their reasoning, and now I have the exact same reasoning. And I'm willing to take myself out of things if I feel like they could potentially compromise my health. So I will oftentimes dismiss myself from sleepovers or late nights if I feel like I need to. If I'm feeling super tired, I'll just say, like, hey guys, I'm tired, I have to go. Additionally, refraining from drinking is another thing. I think my friends secretly love that because then they have a designated driver. And I always keep extra meds and snacks on me. So in all of my purses, you'll see I have probably like 3 doses of medicine as well as a little bag of trail mix that I keep at all times because I know that eating is something that's so crucial for me. And if other people aren't eating, I still need to. And I'm not gonna wait for them if they have to. So yeah, I just wanted to put an example line over here that I have a lot to do, so I promised myself an early night. There are certain things you can do. I'm not gonna lie, I do lie sometimes. I have an early morning, I have a lot to do. No, I don't, but I do want to get home. But I am very grateful that I'm at a point in my life where I have a very solid friend group and people who support me no matter what. I have a lot of friends who will initiate the conversations that I'm sometimes too scared to initiate. Sometimes I'll be with my friends and they'll just casually be like, what do I do if you have a seizure again? What do I do if you have a panic attack? And these are things that I don't bring up, but they just need to know how to help me. Or if I just mention I'm tired, they'll be like, oh my God, Pree, do you want to move our plans back home? We don't have to eat dinner out, we can order it. And having friends who support you in that way, who are willing to understand you, that is something that's so important, something that I wish that I had learned much earlier in life. But yeah, okay, well, thank you so much for coming and listening. Keep in touch. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
I was wondering, after the 5th grade, would you have liked your parents to have encouraged you to share this with other kids, or would you would have preferred just to keep it quiet up until high school, or what would have your sort of
I think at the time, I definitely preferred to kind of keep it quiet because it was something I was still processing as well.
But knowing what you know now, would you go back and do differently?
I think I could have benefited from a community, the way that Brainy Camps and Teen Speak Up provided me with, and I see all those young kids doing those things. I do think that is something I could have benefited from at that age.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
So I think that because her seizures were not happening like in a public place, you know what I mean? They were happening in the morning. So that's why it never came up. Like naturally it might have come up otherwise, you know, if it was happening like at school or like in certain, so I think when the time came, like, you know, when it was happening in front of other people then, but I do absolutely agree, Pree, that, and for any parents who are here, community is so important, and the Brainy Camp was incredible. Like when you would come back and say, you know, we're speaking the same language, the same experience, like people my age, you know, it was just really powerful. So for any parents who are out there, my gosh, you know, we can do our part for sure, but there's nothing like having peers who have that same lived experience and that same the same language, and even like you said, you were joking about things at a certain point. So what a good feeling that is, you know.
Will you continue your advocacy work at Northeastern?
I hope so. Yes.
I have a daughter there who would probably help you. She's a senior, so she's looking to volunteer. So I gotta put her in touch with her. Her older sister has epilepsy, and actually went to GW.
No way, that's so funny. Yes, I would love that. Definitely put me in touch.
I was just wondering, when you went to college, what sort of accommodations, were there any accommodations that you felt were beneficial in terms of your living situation? Like, did you have a roommate? Did you not?
I did not. GW kicks students off campus pretty early to get their own apartments. So I didn't get any living accommodations, unfortunately. But I always had roommates, and every time I did, I would tell them about my epilepsy, and I would also make sure that my bed wasn't too high if it didn't have a side railing, and just taking my own precautions.
I actually work at Northeastern, so I'm excited that I do continuing education for school nurses across the country. So I hope you saw me smiling when you said that your school nurse was really, supportive, because most are, not all are. So that was really good. And that's what I would want to ask you is, I know the school nurses would ask you, what was it that, and I think something you said too, that a lot of times, whether it's a chronic condition and there's any stigma to it, families may not want to tell anyone at the school, but just making sure that you do share with the school nurse. They are going to be as confidential, but everyone needs that safety net, but especially kids with any chronic illness.
We don't want to tell because, for example, my daughter didn't go to any school trips.
Yeah.
That's one of them. And one school trip she was allowed to go, but I was requested to be with her because school trip doesn't have nurse. For safety condition, I had to be with her in a room. She didn't talk to any other students, just me.
Well, I will tell you that that's illegal.
That's illegal.
They have to provide accommodations for your daughter, whether they hire an agency nurse or they cancel a field trip. That's the way that legally it goes. So advocate, and you don't have to go on every field trip, but they have to accommodate your daughter. So, but I would say thank you. Then I'm glad you had a good experience with your school nurse, and I'm sure we'll be talking after this.
Yes, absolutely. I would love that. And yeah, she was amazing. Loved her. And thank you for your work also.
And I don't know if she'll speak up for herself, but Mookie Gill right there. She also is a student at Northeastern.
Hi!
She runs an epilepsy club.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm itching to talk.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
God.
Mookie. My brother has Dravet syndrome, and my friend at Northeastern has epilepsy, so we started the Epilepsy Alliance at Northeastern earlier this year. We're having our first event on Monday, so I'll send you the info.
Yes, definitely. That's incredible. That's so cool.
I'm very happy to have been here and to hear why we made the community. We really need that community at Northeastern, so I'd love to grow it as much as we can.
Definitely. That means a lot, and that's so incredible that you took that initiative, for sure. And I would love to be part of it and to support it anyway.
So is my daughter.
Oh, But yeah, send me the info somewhere. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everybody. Thank you for listening to me and for staying here. I hope you learned something. And enjoy the rest of the conference.